Yo, everybody. So today I'm going to be going through my top three favorite cold email outreach strategies to use when I run campaigns. Okay, so um, yeah, out of the three I'm going to show you, I mean, they all work. I've tried them all across a whole bunch of different markets, different offers, and yeah, they all work basically. Um, the key is to basically test them all out and see which is going to work best for you. That's really the way to know which one of the three is going to work the best. But in general, these three are pretty much how I always do cold email in my own business and for cold email campaigns that we run for clients. We pretty much test all these three strategies out, and at least one of them works. Like, assuming you've got like a validated offer, your target market, one of these is going to work. Like, it's just, I haven't seen a case personally um, where one of these doesn't work when you have a good offer. Like, it's just, yeah, it's just impossible that one of them won't work at least. So what I'm going to do is just explain the three approaches that I prefer to use, some of the pros and cons of them each, and then also show you some quick examples of how they would look practically in terms of like a cold email messaging script or template, whatever you want to call it. So the first one here, the first approach or strategy is just what I call like a direct pitch intro approach. I'm not sure how else you'd really call it. So it's pretty straightforward. It's really where you just like reach out and introduce who you are and what you got, what it's going to do for them. Essentially, yeah, it's very straightforward, simple, probably the most straightforward of all the three approaches. It's one that works really well, especially if you've got a proven offer, you've got case studies, some kind of credibility you can leverage, and you know your target market well. This one works really well. And it's also really good for generating like buyer intent leads or booking buying intent sales meetings. Because of the nature of this outreach, you're typically only going to get people replying who have a high level of problem solution awareness, meaning they like know they have the problem you solve and they know they need to fix it relatively soon. So this is really good for that, generating those buying intent kind of leads. Okay, so really simple. You can see from the example here, I'm not going to read out this entire script. You can see it on the screen. But yeah, kind of the way it works is literally as I just explained. You just reach out, tell them who you are, tell them what you got, tell them what results it's going to get them, what it's going to do for them, benefits. Finish off with a simple CTA. It's pretty straightforward, honestly. Like I said, as long as you've got a good offer, know your target market, um, and the people in that target market have this problem, like this is going to get responses, this approach, like it just pretty much always does. So yeah, fairly straightforward. As I said, really the keys are just making sure you have a good offer and you know your target market well. Otherwise, this is pretty much like a bread and butter approach I use. Like when I'm creating cold email campaigns for like a brand new client, this is like the first kind of approach I focus on. Since I only also work with clients with proven offers as well. So it's kind of just like stacking the deck in your favor. The second one here is the one-liner question approach. Not even sure how to really call this approach, honestly, but it's kind of like the logic with this approach is just like, yeah, I mean, you're reaching out and you're literally just asking a question, whether it's related to something they do, whether it's related to your offer, whether it's asking them a question about whether they even have the problem you solve, something like that. So I'm going to run through a few different examples on how to use this approach. So this approach, where it differs from the first one is the obvious. It's shorter because it's like a one-liner question. But secondly, really importantly, is that this is really good where you want to generate responses from prospects who don't have a really high level of problem solution awareness. Like with the first approach I run through, you're really only going to get people replying who know they have that problem and know they need to fix it, which is really good because you're getting buying intent sales leads. With this approach, you're not necessarily, you're going to get them as well, but on top of that, you're also going to get responses from prospects who they might have the problem that you solve, but they don't realize they need to solve it right now, or maybe they're not really sure if they have that problem, but maybe there's some kind of curiosity in their head about it. So it's a different level of awareness in the responses you're going to get when you use an approach like this, which is really good in a way too, because it's also a good way to kind of get feedback about offers and things like that as well. So that's kind of the really key differences from a marketing fundamental point of view. Okay, so how you would do it practically. So I've got some examples here. I think I got 3 examples on the screen here that I'm going to run through. So again, I'm not going to read out the script. You can see it on the screen. I'm just going to explain the logic behind it. So it's pretty much you're just reaching out and you're asking a question. Whether they have that problem you solve. That's literally it. Very simple. It's just like reaching out to see if you struggle with blah, blah, blah. And then you just say the reason I ask is because we do X, Y, Z. It's very straightforward. So all you're doing with this example is you're literally just reaching out to ask, do you have this problem? Because you have no idea if they have that problem or not, or if they even think it's a problem they need solving, something like that. So that's really the logic behind this, literally to reach out, see if they have the problem or not. And if they don't, they're not going to reply, basically. But if they do, then you can kind of move the conversation forward via the email and obviously move it offline to a sales meeting because you think there's going to be a good fit and they're qualified. So number 2, this one's shorter. So this one here is far more direct than the first example I just went through. So this is, again, you're just reaching out and you're literally just one line question. If I could get you this result in this time, would you want to hear more about it? That's literally it. So if you've got a really good offer that it's validated, you got credibility in case studies, testimonials, this is a really good approach. And it's going to generate a lot of the types of responses from prospects who do have that high level of awareness. Okay, it's just a different way of doing it because it's just like reaching out with a one-liner question about whether they want that result, basically. Okay, so that's how you would kind of look at it that way. Another way to do it is this third example. This is just like asking a question about whether they're even the right person to speak with, like whether they're the decision makers. This is a very good way to get these kind of, it's a very low risk kind of way to get responses, basically, because you're not even really you're not pitching anything. You're just trying to reach out to see if they're even the right person to speak with, but you are mentioning what you do. As you can see on the screen here, you're basically saying, yeah, I'm looking to partner up with, or I'm reaching out regarding blah, blah, blah. And then you're just finishing, would you be the right person to speak with about that? Or you can even ask, another way to write that is, are you the appropriate person to speak with about this? So the idea here is it's a very low risk way to get responses. You should ideally have some kind of good idea of who the kind of decision makers are in the types of companies you're going after. But if you're targeting CEOs, you probably wouldn't send a message like this because they're the primary decision maker anyway, especially at a small business. But if you're contacting really big companies that have, say a marketing department with a marketing director, marketing executives, something like this works quite well because there's usually multiple stakeholders they need to go through to get to the final decision. So if you're targeting kind of those what I call secondary level decision makers like sales directors, marketing directors, COOs, stuff like that, this is a really good approach because they can often direct you to the other decision maker or the other stakeholder who has the primary level of decision making. So just something to keep in mind there. So that's kind of 3 examples of how you would use the one-liner question approach, okay? So as you can see, there's different ways you can use it. You can kind of like pitch directly just in a question. You can just reach out and ask, do you have the problem? You can ask if they're the right decision maker, which, as I just mentioned, is really good for targeting bigger companies where they have multiple stakeholders. So that's really how that approach works. A really good one. It's one that, yeah, as I said, I definitely recommend you test out as well in conjunction with the first one. Last but not least, this is a really good one. I have a lot of success with this one. So the free value approach. So this is where, I mean, as the name suggests, you offer something for free up front in your outreach message. So what you offer for free up front could be like an audit of some kind, some strategy document, could be a video, could be a case study that's in a video or a PDF. Could be a Google Doc. It could be honestly anything. Like, I mean, I worked with a client that dealt with like payment processing for like e-com stores. And one of the things we offered was like a free statement analysis. It was basically literally like a 1-2 page PDF that just showed how much money they could save by moving from Stripe to this client's payment processing solution. So, I mean, there's honestly so many things you can do with this approach. But this is a really good one because this will actually generate those kind of lower level of awareness prospects as well, which you can then educate on the problem and then also at the same time sell your solution, why it's the ideal solution to overcome that problem. This is why I really like this approach, because by the time you typically get them on the phone call for the sales call, they're kind of almost like pre-sold because of the content you sent over. So they're like, it actually kind of takes them from low buying intent to high buying intent through the content. So as long as it's good content, of course. But yes, that's kind of why I really like this one, because you get those kind of prospects that have the low level of problem awareness, but then through the content, you increase that level of awareness to high, which increases their buying intent. So you get them on the phone. It's a really good conversation typically. That's kind of how that works practically. It's very simple to do. Here's an example. Again, I'm not going to read out the entire script because you can read it yourself. But just to highlight it, that's kind of how you do it. You tell them why you're reaching out, who you are, why you're reaching out. And then you just tell them you've basically got something for them that helps them overcome what challenge or does X, Y, Z. And then you just tell them, like, for example, in this example, I've got a short 3-minute video for you that explains in more detail what I'm talking about. So you can either have a video or you could just say something like, I've got like a 1-page PDF that explains the strategy in more detail. So whatever, you can really do a lot of stuff with it. So main thing is you just have some kind of free content that you've packaged up that educates the prospect and also pre-sells them on why your solution helps with that problem. And then ideally, move them to a sales meeting if they're going to be a good fit to carry things further. So that's pretty much it. They're really the 3 main outreach approaches I use. So, like, just to give you an example of how I do it. So, for example, like any brand new client we take on, we pretty much create like messaging scripts for each of these 3 approaches, and then we just test them at the same time. And there has been cases where, like, you know, we might just do like the first approach, and then if it's not getting a huge amount of responses, we'll switch to like one of the other 2. My personal preference, though, is to test all 3 at the same time, especially if you've got enough prospects, because it's the fastest way to get the data rather than just doing one and then doing the other and then doing the other. If you just test them all at the same time, it's much easier to get the data. You just get it faster, basically. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend as well, to do it the same way. Test out all 3 approaches at the same time. Watch this video again if you need. Like I said, pretty much one of these is guaranteed to work. Like, I don't think I've worked with a client in the last, 2 or 3 years where at least one of these hasn't worked, if one of them didn't. Like, so yeah, as long as you got a good offer, you know your target market, I can always guarantee you one of these will work if you test them all out and you do it properly, like you actually send enough emails and whatnot. One of these is gonna generate positive responses for you. So that's pretty much it. They're my top 3 favorite cold email outreach strategies and approaches. They're the ones I typically use all the time, at any one time. So hopefully you get some value out of the video. And if you're struggling to get responses or kind of how to approach your outreach and messaging, hopefully some of these will give you some ideas to stimulate your own kind of creativity for your next campaigns you're going to run. That's about it. If you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, drop a comment. If you're on YouTube watching this, like, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.